They were not rocket scientists. In other words, they knew that you were departing from orthodoxy, but not, they didn't have a truly principled disagreement with positions that they were ascribing to you, but rather they just knew that you were not playing along.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised genuinely because these people knew me. I was there every day. I'm very polite. I'm very nice to everyone. And I have the old school etiquette and you know, way about me. And I thought that they would genuinely go, oh my God, Lady Alchemy is a Republican? Maybe I should or a Trump supporter? Maybe I should rethink what I thought a Trump supporter was. Instead, they went the other way. They went, oh, Lady Alchemy is a Trump supporter. She's a racist, Nazi, bigot, you know, I don't know, all the words.
If I could be a Nazi, you certainly could be a Nazi, I assure you.
I know, it's crazy. So I was shocked by that. And I was like, how can you ascribe, like, you see me every day. You know who I am.
They thought they did, but now they know the truth.
Yeah.
You were actually a terrible person.
I'm secretly a racist the whole time, secretly.
And you know what? And then we know the rest. We know how it goes from there. Culminators, I want to talk to you today. I want to introduce you to a friend of mine for many years, a person who's a disgrace, Martina Markota. By her own admission, she's a disgraced New York City nightlife icon. This is the phraseology that Martina has chosen on her many platforms. A model and performance artist who goes under the name of Lady Alchemy, also owner of Magnum Opus Productions, studied math at NYU, so already we know who the smartest person in the room is, spent 10 years working in the performing arts industry. I'm already learning something I didn't know was an industry. The business, right? The biz. She was later exposed as a right-winger and hounded out of work by right-wing critics. And she and I have shared many, many moments during that experience that she has suffered from. She was with the Daily Caller for a while in Washington, D.C. as a video producer. What Martina Markota is a culture vulture of the sort that you really don't find anymore. And although there's a million things we could talk about, I'm really looking to hear Martina's thoughts about the future of culture in our country. So Martina, thank you so much for joining the program today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored.
Well, I don't know about honored. Let's not push it here. Come on, come on.
I don't do that many interviews anymore. I kind of just keep to myself. So this is the first one in a while.
But isn't that because most people hate you now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, okay. So since so many people hate me as well, not nearly as many as hate you, though, I think.
Ooh, ouch.
No, I mean, you seem, no, but that means you're doing something very, very right, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is it very, very right wing? Martina, how did you how do you go from being a math major? I mean, I guess most math, look, you understand, this is anyone who's ever listened to my program before knows at better schools than NYU can be in some departments, one of the better schools, right? They're not training schools. You didn't major in math in order to become a mathematician. That's very, very few people do that.
Right.
But nonetheless, you also didn't major in cultural studies or anything even from the humanities. And yet that seems to be the space that you kind of work in. So what's the evolution here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it always has been there, that mix, since I was younger. When I was in high school a while ago.
Like 10 years ago, I guess, huh?
We'll say 10. But like I took like all the AP art portfolios and art history, as well as IB math studies and like all that stuff. And there was a point where
where'd you go to high school? You don't have to tell me the name of the town if you want, but what?
No, it's okay. I went to Red Hook High School. It's up in the Hudson Valley. So it's a lovely, lovely Hudson Valley area. I don't know, near Woodstock, if you know it, up there, Rhinebeck.
Yes. Sure. Okay.
Really lovely.
Oh, so that's interesting because yeah. I know that's, although the further north you go in New York, the redder it gets.
Yeah.
I also know that the part of upstate New York that you're talking about is on the crunchy side.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funky, so some of the hippies never really left.
Yeah, it's a weird combination because it is very hippy dippy, like artsy, very artsy. Like, Woodstock is right there. You'd be surprised how some super granola like hippies are kind of right wing. Like, remember they used to be like anti-vax and all that, and like they were homeschoolers. So it's weird because you get some of that. You get a lot of city people that came up and then they started making the real estate kind of rise, and it got a little bit more lefty. But there's also some local like rednecks we call them. There's like it's farmlands.
Right.
But then some farmland is like very like organic, hippy dippy, like come to our orchard and vineyards. So they can be also maybe lefty kind of farms. So it's a mix. It's a mix bag there. So it's all right. I definitely know plenty of people on our side politically. And then I definitely know a lot of people from my hometown that are like championing against me, that are like they want to change the town, make sure that we're all progressive. And I've been keeping an eye on the school system because when I was there, I have not seen all that's going on with the school systems with the equity and the, race kind of calling out or whiteness or that didn't exist.
Well,
Like we just had, it was mostly white town, but I remember we had an Indian or a black person here and there or whatever, and no one made even a stink about it. We all just kind of got along. So
no, that we turned out that was a big mistake. We were all actually suppressing our hatred now, and now the hatred is flowing freely, and we can truly enjoy it. Okay, so in high school, you're cooking in this sort of cultural.
Yeah, so like I was always into the arts, but I was also a math tutor, and I knew that like I wanted to do something. I liked both of those things, and I always have. And I remember toying around when I was looking at colleges about going to art school and pursuing an arts career. But then something clicked in me where I was like, I don't think that going to school for arts is really the thing. I should go for something like math. Like, like it clicked in the early 2000s that maybe school is like a scam if you're going for like, why am I going for art? There's no use for that. And I don't want to be forced to do art. I kind of want to do it at my own leisure, and studying it so in depth was a bit much. And I was like, I think it'd be a smarter choice to do something more like math. And so I was going to be a math teacher actually.
Oh, so it wasn't you wanted to be a quantitative analyst or a physicist, or you wanted to maybe teach mathematics.
Yeah, I was really good at a tutor, and I'm a really great teacher. I'm going to homeschool myself, so I guess the skill comes in handy now eventually.
Yes, well, you are a pedant, and you should be wearing your teaching shoes for this session, because that's why we called. All right, so you finished NYU, you get the degree, and you promptly do not become a teacher, or did you?
No, I mean, to be a teacher, you need a master's in New York State.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Even to be like to be at least a high school teacher. I think even early education. So you need a master's. It's pretty vigorous. And I think New York and California are the toughest state requirements for teaching.
I mean, in terms of credentials, as opposed to
Credentials.
ability or knowledge or character.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what the rest of the country is like. I just know that New York is really tough. I'm pretty sure you can even just get an associate's in another state and just like, I don't know, even student teach or whatever it's called, be assistant teacher, do something. But you need all sorts of degrees and stuff in New York. And yeah, it was the mid 2000s, and I was like, I think that school's a scam. I was like kind of into all that conspiracy stuff, and I was like, school's a scam. Like I'm spending so much money at NYU. Like
NYU was so expensive.
oh my God, it's so expensive just to be a teacher. And I just kind of got burnt out. It took a lot of upper level math. I mean, like multivariable calculus, engineering physics, like circuit, like, and I was like, I'm so burnt.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Coleman is nodding his head knowingly, only because he's heard these terms. Okay.
Well, you studied law. That's a whole, it's like logic. So, logic and math, like.
No. Well, and I was an economics major, but there was a math track and there was a non-math track, and even on the non-math track, like macroeconomics is very heavy in modeling, and I was just awful. But the fact is, like you, as kind of an artsy fartsy or kind of person spiritually, I forced myself to major in something that would have some rigor,
right?
Because I felt that I can always be artsy fartsy, but I'm not going to have the opportunity to learn a rigorous discipline that will
Yeah.
really analyze, issues and whatnot.
I think it's an important balance. And that's where Lady Alchemy kind of comes in. The study of alchemy is like there's a balance of science and something a little bit more spiritual, and art can be a bit spiritual and all that stuff. So you need a little bit of both. And so that's why sometimes I wax and wane on like the artsiness or the like logic side of it. And that's kind of what happened is I got burnt out of the math, and then I said school's a scam anyway. um and then I said let me just do some of my artsy thing. Like I miss doing the arts, and I was doing
You're in New York, at New York University. This is just a couple of years ago, of course. But it was a key couple of years ago, because this was really when New York was in its glory
oh
in
yeah.
our lifetime. I mean,
Yeah, I would say so, because if you look at the mid 2000s, even up to like mid 2010s, it was safe. I never felt like I was in danger. I used to run around as a single young woman, running around in the middle of the night, nightlife, and all made up. And it was fun. The parties were fun. Even the LGBT crowd that I was a part of, we'll get into, was really fun. We were a bunch of weirdos that dressed up and went out, and it was just, it was safe and it was fun. And now everyone sees online, and they go online complaining about New York, which I defend, but it's like, it's a little scarier today. It's a bit different.
yes,
So
yes.
I would say it was its heyday for sure.
Okay, so you're hanging around with this artsy crowd, running around. Are you making a living yet? You're working?
Well, I did a little bit of catering and stuff like that. I worked for a staffing company, and then I could build a business. But once the bookings start getting more for Lady Alchemy, less catering gigs happen, and the next thing you know, yeah, I'm full time. Got an agent, working at one of the
All right. So
theaters.
tell us about Lady Alchemy then.
Yeah, I've always been into alchemy, and again, that's like a little science side mixed with.
But that's, in other words, that was your metaphor of choice.
Yeah.
Taking the base of this world,
Yeah,
and elevating it into,
transmuting it into a piece of art. So yeah, it was taking certain truths, and you're a spiritual person, so it's like there's
100%, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, there's like spiritual concepts, and it was like, how do I portray that in the visual performing realm? So that was my aim. It was always to try to do that.
So you get into, now, were you politically tuned in at all at this point in your life?
Yeah, so I am first generation American. Both my parents and my older sister were born in former Yugoslavia. So I was raised really anti-communist because
I know
my mother,
same thing.
Yeah, my mother warned me about communism. And if you remember, in the 90s, there was the Yugoslavian breakup and the war going on. She would also complain about Muslims when I was young, because there's like a thing there with like I'm Roman Catholic. And I think Croatians are very nationalist, where there was a lot of pieces to it that kind of made me raised pretty conservative, despite me running around in New York City doing some artsy fartsy shit.
Which is why I'm asking, because and not only artsy fartsy shit, but it's not, at least at that stage, as far as I know, we're not talking about fine arts, right? You're not a sculptress, you're not a painter. Why do we say sculptress? We don't say S for anything anymore, right? Chicks are actors now. Okay. But you're not a sculptress, and you're not a paintrix. You are a poet or a poetess, but rather you are a performance artist, which is really kind of weird, because that is a truly artsy fartsy, lefty hefty kind of a business. And yet you saw, am I correct in assuming that you saw it as nonetheless a useful mode for expressing the artistic statements you wanted to make?
Absolutely, because I mean, I like dance, I like movement, so that's kind of my thing. And I like visual arts, I like theater, I like the stage, I like theatrics and lighting and all that stuff. Stagecraft is really fascinating to me. You're sharing something.
I'm sure some of the stuff that you have done, that's so interesting. This is
Oh, this is like my modeling stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I did this campaign. Well, so wait, to get back to your comment about it, what was that?
about
About
being
the performing arts.
being sort
Yeah.
of a conservative oriented person, and yet feeling comfortable in the world of performing arts, which tends to be
Yeah. So like the performing arts, like performance artist kind of thing is, I mean, I'm not going to be a ballerina. You have to train since you're like 3 years old to do that, but I love ballet. It's a great base. Everyone should do it if you're into performance arts, and all that. And I'm never going to be like a rockette or any of that stuff. What I liked was being in this kind of grungy New York City scene where we got to kind of express ourselves. And I mean, being in a lineup of other people and just being like one of a million other dancers going to an audition wasn't really appealing to me. I wanted to be like a weirdo. I'm like, I'm Lady Alchemy. I want to create my own persona. So performance art is kind of like the place where you could do that. You know, if you think of any performance artist out there, it's like they do, I don't know, like even Marina Abramovic. It's like she sits there at an art gallery and just sits at a table all day long, and you can come up to her. You know, it's like you can express yourself in different ways. So how do I take alchemy and express it my way? I tend to do it more theatrical than Marina Abramovic, but you know,
folks. We stick a pin in what Martina just said, because this is going to be, we're going to circle back to this when we talk about culture in this country. Okay,
yeah.
so all right, so this is you're developing this career, and you're finding that people are willing to pay you to do the things that you're doing.
Yeah. It's just amazing. It's a dream come true. I mean,
And
most people are like, well, what's your side job? What do you really do? And it's like, no, I do this full time. I have an agent. I was working at a nightclub where it's basically, I call it Studio 54 of today. It's called The Box. And it's the hot spot. It's where celebrities are. It's where Beyonce's having her party. Lady Gaga's showing up. Like, you know, James Franco's in the audience all week long. You know what I mean? Every single night of the week, he's coming in for it's like who's who is trying to get in, and everyone's asking, can you get me in at the door? And it's like a swarm of people. If you think of Studio 54, you know, what's that movie with from the 70s? What is Saturday Night Fever? What it's like that at the door, where it's like you're clamoring to get in, like you're hoping you get in. If you're dressed cool enough, if you look cool enough, maybe they'll spot you and say you can come in. Yeah, that's the kind of place I worked.
right.
It was so cool.
And there were no political litmus tests, obviously.
Not at the time, not in like mid 2010s. It wasn't until 2016 where then suddenly like a lot of the performances, a lot of the hosts on the mic and the you know, between the performances had a lot of political things to say, and I was like, what's going on here? You know, roll my eyes a little bit. Whatever.
What kind of performers were these? I'm curious.
There was all sorts of stuff. So there's stuff that probably you would not be very interested in, very taboo, weird thing.
Or I might not admit being interested in.
Yeah. But then there were some Cirque people. There were performers that traveled around the world and they did like contortion acts. There was David and Danya, who they're a really famous couple who do the quick change act. So you may have seen them on TV already. And they do the, you know, and they do the quick in a few seconds. They pull up a sheet and then she has a whole different outfit on, you know, things like that.
This sounds a lot like the kind of variety acts you might have seen when I was growing up on Ed Sullivan.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. But what we would do is kind of twist it a little bit. So it's a bit late night. And sometimes like they would have like a normal act like that. David and Danya had their they're famous, you know, world travelers. There was a brother group, young Italian boys, and they do the thing where he's like on his back, like flipping his brother, and he's doing flips in the air with his, you know, and it's like they're doing this acrobatic thing together. There was a contortionist, amazing woman. And
sort of, that sounds a little influenced by maybe Blue Man Group also, you know, that sort of combination of physical performance and virtuosity combined with edgy, funky,
mixed with those variety shows that are very talented Cirque type things. They would kind of have their house acts where they would be a little raunchier and a little bit more sexual or a little bit more trippy. You know, they had one performance where the costume was just big giant pair of lips with legs, and the arms were like the tongue, and they would be like licking things. And
Really?
it's
That's
very
interesting.
avant-garde.
That's fascinating because I've been described that way myself, actually, as someone
Yeah.
with literally no lips. All right, so we could talk about this for easily for
Yeah.
half an hour, but I want to now scoot ahead a little bit and find, when did the political stuff start affecting you?
During Trump's 2016 campaign. It
During
was
the
the
campaign.
campaign before he was even elected. I think we all saw it. We all felt it, especially in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey area.
You mean, when you say it, you mean the politicization of everything?
It was like like, I remember George W. Bush being president. Everyone hated him, right? And it was the
Right.
whole,
Bush,
oh God,
Bush Hitler, Bush Hitler.
yeah, Bush Hitler. He was
I mean,
racist.
it wasn't a mild disagreement. It was, this man is the absolute.
Yeah.
So we thought we
He
had put it off.
masterminded 9/11, but he was also the biggest dope in the world. Like, he was, I didn't think it could get as bad as that was, but the Trump thing, every single time a Republican comes kind of up, they find a way to destroy him more and more severely. So then it came to Trump, was like the next big one since Bush, and it was like even worse. And I was like, oh my God, they're like, if you even hint of being a Republican or like Trump out of all of the candidates, you're crazy. You're crazy. So
And they went from crazy to something much worse than crazy, right?
yeah, but went to Nazi very quickly.
And of course, you're Croatian, so we know you actually are a Nazi,
Oh my God, stop.
right?
I mean, I didn't even know all of that until I started being like, I'm not a Nazi. I was like, I'm Eastern European. And I was like looking into all the history, and I was like, oh, maybe it's not the best angle.
And so, I mean, were you at around that time? Would you say you were sort of at the peak of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I was like in the mix. I was, and it's tough because sometimes when people try to like shit on me online or something, they're just like, oh, you're a nobody. And I'm like, I mean, I'm not sitting here like in the Hollywood, LA kind of scene, like trying to be a movie star. Like, I was in a very niche, New York City,
Right.
like live entertainment, like scene. So, but in my scene, I was very well known, and that's where the whole icon comes from. I did these ad campaigns where they had other New York City nightlife icons like Amanda Lepore. She's like a famous transgender older person, like club kid scene. You've probably seen her. She looks very crazy, but she's a really sweet woman. And I call her one, which she's done the whole thing. The older trans people that I worked with, they understood what they were. They weren't trying to be like offended for you not thinking I'm like a real one. No, they did the whole procedures. They weren't sitting there with all the male bits and going, you have to call me a woman. Like they knew what they were.
Oh,
but
this is
like,
a really important point. In other words, they, at that time, they were free to do what they wanted to do, to take whatever treatments or procedures they wanted to, but there was not this requirement that everyone pretend not to notice.
We were in the freak scene. We were freaks.
You were, weren't you?
They were a freak. They knew it. I was a freak in my own weird way, just because I'm like, oh, I'm a weirdo. I dress up, like, and I'm Lady Alchemy. Like, it's a weird thing to be like, call me Lady Alchemy.
And you're making a living doing this, right?
Yeah, 100%. I did very well. I had an agent. I worked at that theater 5 days a week, full time, and I was a staple there. And I was busy. I was a workaholic, busy. But yeah, then I started noticing these political things about Trump kind of popping up, and a lot of animosity. And I knew that like everyone around me were very liberal, or what do we call leftist? Is that what we want to call them, leftists?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to. I'm very passive, and you've seen me, you know me. I can be quite passive about stuff, and I don't even want to get into an argument. Like, there are times I don't even want to call you if we have to like discuss something serious. I'm just like, oh, I'm scared. Like, Like I don't want any arguments at all. So I've avoided the whole political conversation with everybody. And I just knew I have my beliefs and they can have their beliefs, but I can still love them. That's okay. And most of them knew that I was a bit conservative side and like a little bit like, I mean, I'm straight and I'm a real woman.
And you're married now.
And now I'm married. And that's the thing. When I was single, I was like, oh, like time is ticking, I'm turning 30 and I need to have a family. And they would say backstage, oh, you don't need kids. Men are just accessory. Like they would do the whole feminist thing with me. And I'm just like rolling my eyes like, okay, maybe that's you, but like I want the normal family husband kind of thing, and that would be nice. But in my scene, I didn't know where to find that. Like I'm around a bunch of weirdos. Like I'm not going to find someone with the same values as me. So
when did the other shoe drop? In other words, shoe one was enhanced or heightened consciousness, political consciousness, both on your part and the part of those around you. When did it start to affect your ability to work
okay, so
and make you a
I got
disgrace?
exposed is just like, it's so stupid because it shows you how like old I am and bad with technology. But basically I was known as Lady Alchemy. There were people that I worked with every day in the theater that give me my checks that didn't even know my real name. I remember someone in the office saw through the paperwork that my real name was Martina Markota. They go, that's really beautiful. Like they had no idea my real name. I'm Lady Alchemy. That's what we are. I don't even know other people's real names. They're, whatever weird name that they choose, that's how you know them as. And I was there's something psychological not about not being able to like express yourself. So everyone else was being very vocal politically. They were saying all sorts of stuff I disagree with, but I didn't want to get into an argument with friends or coworkers or people, but it was like bottling all of this stuff in, not knowing any other conservatives in real life or online or anything. And I thought, I have to express myself somehow. How can I do this? And I go, well, I'm 30 years old. My real name is a clean slate. They don't know who that is. Let me use my real name. And I bought my website, martinamaRkota.com, wrote a little piece about, being into like burlesque performance art or whatever, and being a conservative, talked about, the culture and the arts and all that stuff, and kind of did my own thing. Not much of a writer, but I was trying to express myself that way. Then I I signed up for a whole different set. Instead of Lady Alchemy social media pages, I signed up to be Martina Markota on my social media pages, and I posted some memes on Instagram and whatever, but I was an idiot and didn't realize at the time that Facebook bought or Instagram at that time. So they would have like a notification for all 5,000 followers of mine, the producers I worked with, the, director at the theater, all of the other
Oh,
performers.
because you were using the same phone number or the same.
Yeah, I was using some same email or something. I messed something up where it notified all 5,000 of them. Your Facebook friend has a new account. Go follow. And then I saw all these people following, going, where are you coming from? And then I see in the comments, is this for real? And I'm just like, shit. And then I went to work and I started to get a little cold shoulders and a little like, hello, when I'm in the dressing room and like ignoring me. And I'm just like, something weird is going on. And then the arguments, the discussion, the, debates backstage started to happen.
And by the way, how many of these people, what percentage of these people were as well educated as you?
Oh my God. Not to be like,
overwhelmingly not people with college degrees, right?
no, not to be like a bitch about it, but
well,
like,
I'm inviting you to be a bitch about it. To make this point that these people
didn't study mathematics, I'll tell you that.
Right. They were not rocket scientists. In other words, they knew that you were departing from orthodoxy, but they didn't have a truly principled disagreement with positions that they were ascribing to you, but rather they just knew that you were not playing along.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised genuinely because these people knew me. I was there every day. I'm very polite. I'm very nice to everyone. And I have the old school etiquette and way about me. And I thought that they would genuinely go, oh my God, Lady Alchemy is a Republican? Maybe I should or Trump supporter? Maybe I should rethink what I thought a Trump supporter was. Instead, they went the other way. They went, oh, Lady Alchemy is a Trump supporter. She's a racist, Nazi, bigot, you know, I don't know, all the words.
If I can be a Nazi, you certainly could be a Nazi. I assure you.
I know, it's crazy. So I was shocked by that. And I was like, how can you ascribe, like, you see me every day. You know who I am.
They thought they did, but now they know the truth.
Yeah.
You were actually a terrible
I'm
person.
secretly a racist the whole time, secretly.
And you know what? And then we know the rest. We know how it goes from there.
Yeah, then it's the cancellation and the, you know, let's get her out of the club, let's get her out of the scene, let's call up every single producer, let's call up every gig that she has and every opportunity that she has, make sure it's destroyed. She's a Nazi. So then now I don't perform anymore.
And you know what? That may be the best thing that happened for you because, you know, listen, I've said this before. Who cares that I said it before? I'm thinking that people have memorized every previous podcast.
I do the same thing.
Right.
I repeat myself over and over again.
So I used to be a performer, not professionally.
Really?
Through high school and college, I wasn't religious then. And through high school and college, I was very, very active in theater, and I was rather successful on the stage. And I remember thinking, this is like a drug. This is a drug.
Yeah.
And there were even people who had gone from Princeton into show business. And we knew them because they had been part of the same ensembles that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that unless they were like all-time superstars, someone like James Stewart, right, who's like a Hollywood icon. So unless you reach that status, a Cary Grant, you're always going from one gig to the next, meaning that your ability to get the supply of the drug is going to be withheld. It's limited. And, I knew that, and besides the fact that even that's even assuming you ever do get work. And I decided not to go in that direction. Now you're having a great time. You're doing all this cool, interesting stuff. But I'm going to maybe push it a little bit here. You're a beautiful woman, and you're also not going to always be a beautiful woman. You'll always be a beautiful woman, but you're going to be an older, beautiful woman at some point. And at some point, your ability to draw an audience for some kinds of the performance art is going to be limited. You've now settled into normal human life.
Yeah.
Like as most people live it, which I mean, do you miss the dopamine rush of
Yeah. I mean, they call it, you'll know this in theater, it's the bug. You get the bug.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is why I feel a little bit robbed, because like I was in a place and it was like, yes, I'm not going to be like whatever the mainstream hottest celeb out there is. And I didn't expect that. But what I was doing was very satisfying for me. And I was known in my scene and in my genre. And in New York, I could go around. I was recognized. I'm just going to say
no, I get it. I completely get that. Yeah. No, I get that.
So, and like, yeah. And what bothers me is that the last of my like youthful years were, as I was on that climb, were stripped from me. Like it's like you're going like that, and then someone just like, it's like the stepsisters in Cinderella just came and ripped apart like all my dress, and the last of my youth was like stolen from me, just being in limbo. It's been 7 years. It's like almost a decade now of me being in limbo. These are my last young years. I'm going to be 40 soon, and now I'm like, well, that's that.
But on the other hand, you avoided the fate of Sunset Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up now, and
yeah. So you're trying to say
you sort of leave you have sort of like career-wise, you leave a good-looking corpse.
Yeah.
Or corpus, but it's not. I don't see your eyes burning with fire over this idea, because you had many good years left where you could have enjoyed it, and maybe you could have made choices at that stage about how. So now I want to switch channels, and I'm sure it's going to end up coming back to this. It's all related, but art. Martina Markota, art through the ages.
Yeah.
You have all these videos. You are, as I said in the beginning, a culture vulture. You're someone with a genuine appreciation for the canon. Certainly, I don't know if literature is included, but the fine arts, performing arts, fine arts. You have a demonstrated interest, and apparently you feel comfortable not only talking about these painting and sculpture, but also cinema. You're a photographer. First of all,
No.
self-taught or is this stuff that you were also learning while you're learning math at NYU?
No, I would say self-taught. I mean, like I said, in high school, I did take art history and art portfolio. So like I have the basics of, you know, the theory and techniques of art from the basics, perspective and all sorts of whatever, and art history, but
So you're using the term art now in the terms of visual art,
fine art, yeah.
fine
Fine
arts,
art.
visual arts, right? Basically painting
Yeah.
and representational art.
Yes.
I'm looking here.
Drawing and painting.
Maybe not a great deal of interest in abstract, or am I wrong about that?
Well, okay, so it's interesting you said, because I was digging up some documents. I was like looking for like my birth certificate or something, and I found like this folder with like my recommendations for NYU, and it was my art teacher in high school, and I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is so crazy. And I'm reading it back and it shows how I had this interest in like representational fine arts, like the classics, neoclassical, like and classical Greek stuff, just really the Renaissance, like the really classic stuff, which is what my photography looks like. I call it the old master paintings, and I like them to look like these Caravaggio's or Rembrandt or something, or Vermeer, and I didn't have an appreciation for abstract back then. No, I didn't. But as I get older and a little bit weirder, I kind of like modern art. There's a difference between modern art and contemporary. People use modern art when they mean contemporary. Yeah, I think a lot of contemporary is a bunch of crap. They're trying to make something stupid be like art, but modern art is actually started in the 1800s, and I don't know, when does it go to? Like 30s, maybe 50s and 60s was still modern art. And I kind of like it. I
It
kind
might
of
be,
like that.
yeah. I mean, it might be fair to say that maybe Andy Warhol is the one who
Yeah.
sticks a fork in it at that point.
Yeah.
It's the end of the road. I actually wrote a brief on this subject, that in a case that's pending before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, involving the wavy baby shoe, which was basically a parody, although you could wear it, of a Vans, a super duper expensive Vans shoe. And the whole question of what is art, I'm going to send it to you, and you're just going to love it. But so because as you got older and more sophisticated, you were able to see how non-representational art was actually
It's its place. It has its place.
it has. Well, but after all, and you had been doing this sort of performance art and avant-garde art
Exactly.
earlier in your career, so you always recognized that there was a place for something other than being, trying to replicate Da Vinci,
Right.
and be a painter, just painter and a sculptor. Now, so you made an important point. There's a difference. First of all, is there such a thing as art in our culture anymore? I mean, they call people who record rap artists.
Yeah, rap artists, right?
Rap artists. Okay,
lyrical artists.
Does art live in 21st century America?
It's hard to see sometimes, and especially with today's age, it's definitely hard to see. But there was a really good Woody
Allen.
Woody Allen. I was gonna say the little like Jewish guy.
I'm the big Jewish guy. He's the little Jewish guy.
Yeah. He did one in the 2000s with Owen Wilson, Midnight in Paris, and it kind of opened my eyes to the idea of like we fantasize like other time periods. That's what the whole movie is about, and I really like it. And we fantasize other time periods, other places, and we just think that there was such a like, man, they really did it then. Like they really had the good artists or the literature then. Like we don't have that today. And it got me thinking, well, who are the great artists of they are here? We just don't know them. They're not household names get,
And what kind of art are they creating?
Yeah, that is the question, and that's a good question, and it actually inspires me to kind of go out and do that again, because in the 2000s and early 2010s, that's when I was trying to, do my Lady Alchemy thing. That's what I went out to pursue and to find. I did meet a few artists that I think are the contemporary times. One guy is Robert Lazzarini, and he's based in Brooklyn, and he does these. This is before people had 3D printers. Like now anyone can buy a 3D printer, but like this was back when it was like, oh my God, having a 3D printer was like a really rare occurrence. And he had a whole factory like Andy Warhol, or probably still does, in Brooklyn. And he would do these 3D prints of things like that were normal. Like I'm trying to think of like an example. I mean, he had like, let's say like a telephone, like a rotary telephone, but he would put like a mathematical shear on it. I don't know if you know what a shear is, but it like slants it and like distorts it, or like
Oh,
puts
okay.
like a waveform like through it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you reprint it and it looks like exactly like a real object, but with this distortion on it. And it does something with your brain that kind of like it trips you out. And so he would do a lot of those kinds of sculptures, and they were really fascinating. So I mean, that's a contemporary artist of today that I think will be in art history books. And it's an interesting thing because it's not like we're again talking about like doing a Da Vinci painting.
Right.
It's using 3D technology,
So, so is this, in your view, is that sort of art, which is a variety of, it's sort of performance art or installation type art?
Yeah.
Is it you think of it as valid as art? I mean, is there like a dividing line in your view that it's either art, and if it's art, then it's as valid as this high technique? You mentioned ballet dancing. I mean, the rigor that's required to be. Do you play any musical instruments?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I grew up playing the flute and clarinet in school.
Okay, so
I got
of course, because you're mathematicians, so it makes sense. Your brain was trained early on to think musically and mathematical music, basically, different expressions, but maybe the same concepts. You recognize then as a musician what the amount of rigor that is required to perform adequately, much less at a virtuoso level, in traditional artistic expression. Is this sort of modern or contemporary art? Am I correct in assuming that it lacks that level of
Yeah,
rigor?
I know what you're saying. I mean, like there's a mix. It really is a bit nuanced. Like I don't want to be the arbiter of like this is art, this isn't art, this is art.
Yeah, that would be pretty.
But
that certainly won't work in the 21st century.
Yeah. I mean, I am a fan of the vigor that you say, the study, the technique. Like I have major respect for that. That's, I think, also a conservative ideal, which is why we appreciate working hard for anything. In alchemy, they call like the religious stuff, the study, the spiritual work. It's like why we call it a ritual. Why do we do rituals? Because something you do every day. It takes every day to do it to become, I don't want to say good at it, because being good at spiritual, it's not really the right way to say it, but to get the value out of the spiritual practice, something you practice, you do it ritually over and over and over again. There's value in that. Same thing with working out. Same thing with anything that takes a long time and dedication to do, like mad respect for that. But there are some people that like don't have that technique necessarily, but like are still able to kind of, they have some sort of je ne sais quoi. They have that spirit of like, they're just talented, like, I don't know if Jimi Hendrix could read music, but he knew how to make, play the guitar and make people go wild over it.
So art is something, right, where I'll tell you something funny. One of the shows I was in, a musical, I was in what's called the Triangle Show, and there was this musical comedy review. And the theme of one year's show was art. And one of the characters was a guy named Art.
I love that.
And well, it's a long story. Okay. I actually played another character throughout I was the muse. I inspired people to create art. Just, for context of where I'm coming from, and really, believe it or not, we're past the 3/4 of an hour mark. This was the tweet that I tweeted. We once lived in a society where art and culture mattered. And what was that a link to? It didn't resolve very well.
Philharmonic.
Right, where there's an incredible story where Glenn Gould, the great pianist, had come up with a novel interpretation of the first piano concerto of Brahms, and he mentioned it to Bernstein. I said, I want to do this at the concert tonight, and Bernstein says, all right, I'm not sure I buy what you're selling, but you're Glenn Gould, and I'd like to see it. I think it's worth doing it. But so the controversy arose when Bernstein, before the performance begins, turns around and says to the audience, I just want to explain something. Glenn Gould has this interpretation that you're about to hear that is really amazing. I'm not sure I agree that it's the right interpretation. And I feel I must tell you that because I'm obviously paraphrasing, but as the maestro, you may very well attribute to me this interpretation, and I'm not there, but let's now enjoy it together. And there's a huge hubbub in the audience, and people are laughing, people are shouting, but it's this shared cultural experience on this really relatively high level. It takes place in 1962, before either of us was born. Okay.
Right.
Is there anything that could possibly happen like that in the year 2022?
Well, I have a question. What did he do that was so controversial? That was his interpretation. What was the element that he did? Do you know?
Yes.
But it intrigues me because that's exactly it. This is what I'm talking about, where it takes that next level of like avant-garde, of like people can be in uproar about it. And I feel like we're at fault of that sometimes on the right, being right-wingers or whatever, of seeing something classical, turning it on its head and then being upset by that. But like, it's not always bad.
I agree with you. And many of our favorite people, Gavin McInnes, for example, have succeeded in their art by shining different lights and looking on things that we're used to. So Gould's performance, okay, it was much slower. He was criticized for taking excessive liberties with the score markings. Recent research has to a point validated his ideas. His tempo was more like what was probably intended by Brahms as opposed to what was the custom. And it's very odd because for some reason, I don't even know if this is why this happened. I'm not any kind of expert on classical music, but going through my Apple Music in the car, oddly enough, the Fifth Symphony, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony came up, and I'm listening to it. And this is everyone knows, this is the most pedestrian. You don't have to know everyone knows the Fifth Symphony. It doesn't, but it was much too fast. It was much too fast. I said, wait a minute, why am I saying this? And I remembered growing up, my father had this collection of performances by the great German exile conductor, Bruno Walter. And I looked it up on the internet, and darn if that was in my mind that was the Fifth Symphony I grew up with.
Yeah.
And it wasn't da 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 da. It was da 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 da.
Yes.
Da, 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 and all this drum. But you're right. See, what I'm trying to get at in the remaining couple minutes here is, even though there are valid we both agree that there are valid artistic experiences a person can have in using modern or contemporary or avant-garde modalities.
Yeah.
But
it's just like, we got to figure it out. Like sometimes, I mean, look at what's happening with AI. There's, like I mentioned with the 3D printing, there's new technologies, there's new things. Like in the 80s, synth came, and like that changed things. And, there's always going to be like something that someone is going to do something brilliant with it. And I have faith in that as humans. I think there's like a general thing where it sucks where if someone's trying too hard and they want to become like, there's the art where someone wants to be an artist and they make, they literally vomit paint onto a canvas and they're like, I'm an artist. And we all kind of roll our eyes. It's like, okay, you wanted to be shocking. You wanted to do something, but there are people that can be genuine, that are really, there's something smart in them, that they take something and they do something new with it. And that is that shift. I wish I knew what it was, because I want to do it.
What do you
And
mean?
sometimes
How do you not know it? You were describing what you were doing for years. You know what it is.
yeah. And when I go through the art history on my streams, sometimes like there's concepts that and you were describing it too, where it's like they psychologically there's even with the impressionistic art where they take color theory and it creates certain imprints with your brain and how it kind of can think. And same thing with this Robert Lazzarini guy with the weird distortions on everyday objects. It created a trigger in your brain that kind of messed with you. And it's like, if you can make art that can have something have a psychological effect like that, or to have theater production or a performance art piece. And that's something that I've done that I'm really proud of, is one of my pieces where it was in an art gallery and it was this live performance piece. And people were like, it was like a spiritual experience. And afterwards it was just stunned faces. And it was like, oh my God. And yeah, I have footage of it, but to be there live, and the footage is great. People kind of have an experience with the footage. But that's what I love about New York and live performance, is that's what we do in New York. We do live performance, we do theater.
And that's the association I have, for example, with Laurie Anderson's Superman.
Oh, Laurie. Yeah, I saw Laurie Anderson like last month in November.
Oh, just now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you don't understand that that's art,
yeah,
we can't talk. We can't talk. At least not about art. We can talk about baseball, All right, that's it. We've lost everyone by now. So we're 54 minutes into this, or something very close to it. Martina, what a great chat. This was exactly what I hoped for. You're such a human, a humane person. You seem to me very happy and a great deal of stress compared to previous times when we have spoken. Yeah. And I'm glad to see, and I hope it continues. And please give Jack my very best.
I will. Thank you. I really appreciate you a lot.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.